Oh, well, we can do it again. All right, let me make sure we're live. And make sure we're live before we start our discussion again because we don't want to miss any video here. So, anybody that's watching, just please bear with us. We had some technical difficulties and we had to start over. I just want to check and make sure we're live before. Okay, y'all can see us. All right. So we just did an hour live with Jeff Myers that went straight in the garbage can because of a glitch. So everybody can see us. So we're good to go. We're live now, correct? Can my team respond and say we're live? All righty. I think we are live. Okay, we're live. They say they see us this time. I don't know what happened last time, Jeff, and I totally apologize to you, sir. But sometimes there's these things that happen. So, Jeff, let's start over. Been over this once, so we have it pretty well scripted now. I do believe. Uh, so,
Yeah.
Central, thanks for joining us for the second time, and I have Jeffery Meyers here live, a retired DEQ engineer from the state of Louisiana. And Jeffrey, tell us who you are first. Let's just start off there again.
All right, sir. Well, first of all, thank you for having me and doing this for me. I really appreciate this opportunity to get out to the citizens in Central this way. Uh, Jeffrey Myers. I grew up in North Baton Rouge, went to Redemptorist from first grade St. Jared through 12th grade, graduated Redemptorist in 71, and went on to do a few different things before I eventually got my act together and went to LSU and got a degree in civil engineering and finished in 1979. I've had an excellent career since then, having gone to Texas for 5 years, worked in heavy industry, applying my trade there in a surface lignite mine. And then from there, I went to Florida for a year doing pure civil engineering design, construction, and actually in development, in designing and implementing residential development, subdivisions, and such in the county of Hillsborough County, Tampa, Florida. They had very, very strict regulations over there in the 80s. But after that, I'm a homeboy. So I'd come back to Louisiana, and like I had said earlier, I came back to Louisiana looking for a job, and the Department of Environmental Quality, the state of Louisiana, called me wanting me to come to work for them as a civil engineer, which really threw me off because all good civil engineers in Louisiana go to work for the highway department. So it was intriguing. It was a new type of career for me in environmental engineering. Had to learn a lot of chemistry. Ended up having to learn a lot of information about radiation, air quality, solid waste, hazardous waste, things like that. Learn the regulations and learn to apply them to the industry that came in wanting operating permits. So I learned a lot. And over the years, I eventually migrated over to emergency management and did a lot of that working incidents with state police hazardous materials group around the state, pipelines, barge incidents, train derailments, things of that nature. Did a lot of that. Did it for 27 years. And at the end of my career, the state police asked me to come and assist them with the oil spill coordinator's office. They took it over after that uh, deep horizons oil spill offshore uh, back in 2010. So as a result of that, I worked 3 years with state police, helping with their training of their people because I did lots of spill response. and training and the techniques in handling it. Then I finally, retired for good, came home, enjoying myself, enjoying my full retirement. My wife finally retired. She and I have been married 27 years, and she finished out her career and came home. And in the last 3 years, I think the highlight of our lives was the flood of 2016. And after that, I started taking a real deep interest in what the things that needed to be done in the city of Central to hopefully not have the same effects again in the future if we could be better prepared. So I've been following that closely, getting involved in all, and I reached a point here not too long ago, and at the urging of some good friends, decided to run for office. Um, it's this is a whole new animal for me. I'm used to working for the taxpayer, but I answered to superiors that judged my work and directed me and all. Now this time I'm working directly for my employer, the taxpayers. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope I have an opportunity, and if I'm successful in gaining this position, you have my assurances that you're going to get an engineer. I'm going to use my same demeanor, intellect, uh, engineering experience, and background to look out for the citizens of Central, because my primary reason for running is the drainage issues, and I wanted to be in a position where I could help make some of the decisions in what we're going to do with our overall drainage program. So for that reason, that's why I am where I am today, and asking for your support.
Well, I think that nobody can question your qualifications. I mean, that was a list there, brother. As far as your qualifications as an engineer and as far as your qualifications for drainage, I'm not sure that we could find anybody that's more qualified than you. So let's move forward. Tell us what just some bullet points, maybe, of what your platform is, and then towards the end of this, we'll dig into those a little deeper. So just give us some bullet points of what you think that you would like to accomplish uh, as a councilman.
All right, good point. Uh, Naturally, the primary reason for running is the drainage plan. When the drainage study comes back, I want to see what they say, see if there's many differences from what was found years ago. There was a drainage study done years ago. I want to see if the new one does and what it presents in the way of recommendations and corrections, and be involved in that. And also, I have a real big push on doing the things that we need to do after we correct the problems in long-term maintenance, so that we don't allow all of our drainage systems to revert back to like they were. Many people were saying they haven't seen East Baton Rouge Parish do drainage work for the last 20 years. Well, that shouldn't happen with the city of Central once we put into place a plan. It's not going to be cheap. It's going to be an investment, but to correct our drainage so that we can handle a major event. Not as big as the one we had in 16, but we shouldn't get all nervous every time we have a 6 or 8 inch rainfall. Which
So you'd say maybe a 100-year flood event. That should be our platform, maybe.
Yeah. And to show you how crazy it is where I live on the Comey River, about a half mile south of Dyer Road. And technically, the water level that reached me was a 100-year event. But people in other parts of the city of Central experienced much higher events due to that amount of rainfall. Um, it's What was your question exactly again?
I think that we were just talking about a 100-year flood event. So if we're going to do our drainage and we're going to update our drainage as we're going through it, I think the pretty market standard is maybe a 100-year flood event.
That's what we'll be looking at. We may or may not be able to achieve that level of protection because of our unique situation, our topography, where we're located between the two rivers converging at Florida Boulevard. And a 100-year event may not be the same on either river. And then the two of them together is what one of them becomes backwater flooding from the other. So, and then we also have to look at once the diversion canal is put into play, that's going to change a lot of what's happening on the west side of Central, the Blackwater Bayou, and I can't think of the other bayou that runs alongside of it. But those two on the west side of Central are going to be impacted in that they won't have to flow to a swollen river in the future. The more half or better of the water is going to be diverted away from the west side. So, and I stand to benefit the best where I chose to live.
Okay, and maybe we could follow. I'm just brainstorming here with you. So maybe the 100-year flood event, we can make sure that our elevations meet that requirement.
Yes, you want and that's one of the things that comes back. There's hydrological studies are going to be done in the future, and once you take those waters out of the Comet River, then that leaves room for waters on the Amite River. They'll have to run these dynamic programs showing the water flows and the backups and things like that. It may change some of the elevations for flooding. I don't see a lot of changing for the east side of Central because right now there's nothing being done or planned on the Amite different than what we've had for the last 2 years. The big changes on the west side. So there's people like myself, my property will probably completely come out of a 100-year floodplain, which to me, yay, don't have that need to pay for annual flood insurance, but it may help a lot of people. Let's say from let's say the Arlene Drive area down to maybe Carmel Acres. I'm not sure. We'll have to see what would be the possibility of backwater flooding from the Amite coming back up to Comey now that all that water's not there anymore. Winchester may still be a susceptible subdivision to flooding irregardless. So don't know yet. It's still early, but those type of hydrological programs will be run here.
And we have a lot of those studies coming back, and I think from CSRS in September, correct?
They should be doing these things. This is what I want to review when they complete their study and submit it for payment. I want to see what they submit to us and see what recommendations they have. One of my concerns is when they analyze each one of these drainage bayous, they've got to put a figure on them saying this how much capacity that particular drainage system has, and this is what capacity it is at presently based upon the amount of development and that's being discharged into that. And I think the last study had Shoe Creek around 90%, which is not very good. That's pretty much saying you can't do much more along Shoe Creek. So those are the kind of things that are important in the drainage study. And then you want to see, well, what can we do when we correct the drainage problems in these particular creeks? Can we widen them? Can we install detention locations and things like that that will increase their capacity? That will take some of the threat off of the subdivisions that are trying to drain into them.
So talk about a little bit about the localized drainage issues. You have any recommendations for that?
Right. And they're everywhere. Everyone that has open ditch drainage in front of their house is probably not happy with it. And I could understand. And it's typical of rural type setting that we have in Central. And it's one way the services initially, when they put in the city services, is the cheapest way out. Curb and gutter is a lot more expensive, but it basically hides what's going on underground. And you can put in curb and gutter that's not adequate. You still have flooded yards because it won't go in the darn gutters. But yes, something has to be looked at. The IBTS guys are working it. There's issues in that they may do one street or may do somebody's yard, but if they don't go all the way to the end of the drain, you're not really solving the problem. So I would hope IBTS and they do good work. They've done work in the area where I am. They do a lot and went the full length. They did what they should do. But I get complaints from people who said they just did a couple houses and left. Well, you can then put in a low spot. And now you got a mosquito ditch.
I can remember when we were part of the. Don't misunderstand me. With no way, shape, or form do I ever want to be part of East Baton Rouge City again. But I can remember, not even cutting to the chase there. But I can still remember when we were part of the East Baton Rouge Parish city system, and I at that time when I was younger, I lived over in Northwoods, and about once every 3 or 4 years, the ditches would get clogged up and not drain. And I would call up, and the city would come out, usually within about a week or so. But when they came out, they would dig out every ditch in the neighborhood, all the way back to the main channel. And that's what you're talking about, correct?
Yeah, and when you go do a neighborhood, that's pretty much the right way to do it. And when you go do a neighborhood, that's slope so that it drains not only through the culvert, but it drains through the open ditch, and it doesn't hold water, it doesn't make mosquitoes and all. And yes, you can't mow the bottom of your ditch anymore after they get through digging it out. You're back to the weed eaters again. But you have a choice of one or the other. You don't get a good flow, or you weed eat the bottom of your ditch after it's properly draining.
And ditches shouldn't be well, if ditches are dug properly, they shouldn't be retaining any water, correct?
That's correct. They should not. And
Okay.
and the IBTS crew does use strings and set levels and grades. I've seen them do it. So they're trying to do it the right way.
Well, they have a new invention. It's called a pipe laser. Have you ever seen one?
Is that the one those guys in Karen Crow where they pull that tire through the culvert?
No, 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 no. I did see that. That was actually pretty funny. But
Yeah.
no, actually, I used to work in the GPS industry and the laser industry, and what they actually have is you have a pipe laser. You set a laser on your grade, and it shoots a laser down through the pipe, and it tells you your slope and your pitch.
Oh,
Uh, and so there's no need for a string anymore. Strings are not because strings, as you know, with gravity, they over a period of length, they tend to not be very accurate after about maybe 20 feet. So investing in a $400 pipe laser may be a good idea.
I'd have to go look and see what they're doing now. I haven't.
That's what they do.
I think the last time I saw them dig ditches in my area was shortly after the.
And they may or may not use string. I don't know what they use, but anyway, I heard you say string. That's pipe lasers. I used to work on those things. That's pretty much what they use now. I don't know what IBTS uses. I have no clue. I've only seen them dig out a couple ditches, and I really didn't watch. I don't know. So
Right.
anyway, let's move past that. So we need to get some sort of program into where we can dig out localized ditches. That's pretty much where you're getting at, correct?
Yeah, and I know IBTS does it, but they do everything. So I don't know. Maybe one week they're doing ditches, another week they're doing potholes, another week they're maybe removing some structures or obstructions somewhere. So
They stay busy.
they do everything because they are our public works. So, but
All right.
my only thing is if I'd like to see what tracking system they have for their complaints. They receive complaints and they clear complaints, and there's a report that's given at the council meeting. And I'd like to look into a little deeper to see how they track the complaints that are not cleared. That would be the source of the ones of the individuals that are complaining to public officials.
Right. Sure. And so IBTS. Let's. So no, I'll tell you what. Let's skip IBTS because we kind of touched on that. Let's go to development. Let's. What's your policy? What do you think your platform would be on any new developments that come into the city?
All right. I don't object to new developments. What I have a serious problem with is when every new development starts off with a waiver request. Then I'm asking, well, did the developer look at the master plan? Is he trying to put his development in the location that the master plan's recommending? Because that was the purpose of the last master plan, is to direct the developers to areas where we want to control development and not have what is called sprawl. That's uncontrolled development. And there's places in East Baton Rouge Parish are very good examples of sprawl, and I won't refer to them directly because I don't want to be accused of being mean. But that you can ride around parts of Baton Rouge and see the effects of sprawl.
I think the technical term is called urban sprawl. Correct.
Yeah, urban sprawl. Uh, I I would say we're trying very hard here in Central not to be susceptible to the same thing. You know, the Walmart's where the Walmart should be. The strip malls in the area where they should be. Different thing. The corridor that's been created now by the Central Thruway is where it should be, and the development that's starting along it is where it should be. It's all in keeping with the master plan.
When you say waiver, oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, now you can have some specifics within the development that might not be with the master plan, and I know that was a big issue before I even got involved in any of the local issues. There's one particular development. Now that's, I'm not going to rehash that, but I know that went to court and everything. You have in the master plan the recommendations, the way you're supposed to do things, and to do differently requires a waiver. And I'm just not the type of guy, after spending 30 years administering environmental regulations, where we said no to a lot of big companies that want to do something different than the law. I'm kind of like the same measure with the master plan. I've read the master plan. I like it very much. I like the way it projects the city and how it's going to direct the direction, the different ways that the city can grow. And if a developer comes and says, well, I want to do this over here, but I want to do this instead. Well, the instead is what's going to give me problems, because the master plan said how to do it, and you shouldn't have to ask for a waiver. You might have little minor things you want to do. You might want to do more than what the master plan requires, and it requires a waiver for that, and I don't think there'll be a problem. So, but just for the sake of changing it all up so you can do it your way is not really necessarily the right way. The leaders who, Mayor Watts and the people that worked with him at the beginning of the city, did their job. They did due diligence in setting up and setting the course for the city, and I think they should be proud of themselves. And that master plan shows it.
Master plan is a great plan. So you would say that when you say waiver, we're talking about variances, correct?
Yeah, waivers, variances. In other words, you want to do something different than you're supposed to do, and you have to get permission to do it. Well, I want to look at why. And it shouldn't really. I got a problem with it being done just for convenience or to make more money. There was a reason for the way they laid these things out, and the people of the city agreed to that master plan design, and everyone is wanting to do it that way. So, and I've seen some of the recent requests for developments got turned down because there was too much of a radical change, increasing the population density in certain areas too much for the surrounding areas, because the people around the development have a right to maintain what they have without it being changed or encumbered upon by a new development. So it can all work out. I'm not a hard-nosed guy that will say absolutely no to change, but I'm a guy that has to be convinced if it's not in keeping with the original design.
So everybody that's currently in any home that lives out here has the right of peaceful enjoyment of their own property, and that's your policy, correct?
They should. They have a right, especially the ones that have been out here. And I talked to a lot of them. I've been out here 30 years. I've been out here 60 years. Like that. I can understand if there's a radical change in the property adjacent to them. And that's what the master plan is supposed to prevent. Now, I will tell you, and I've mentioned it to a couple of people, where I am at is very rural. The 5th District is extremely rural. And the 5th District has the strangest layout. They didn't miss anybody. They started Hooper Road, go up Blackwater, all the way up to Cord, and across to Denham, and then all the way across to Indian Mound, and everything above and to the west of it. So we've got all the rural areas. Well, when they bring in this diversion canal, you're going to be taking away a lot of the 100-year floodplain areas on the west side of the city. It might start becoming attractive to developments. Well, we're going to have to be wise. Well, one of the things we have to be, we'll go look and see what the master plan said when someone wants to do a development. There's lots of subdivisions in District 5, and I was in one today, a real nice one. Everyone had 3-acre or 4-acre lots. Big lot estate type subdivisions. A lot of developers have a hard time with that because the price of land is so high. First thing you want to do is subdivide it down to where you can make some money and put more houses. But that's a density that might conflict with what the master plan says.
Well,
Go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Jeff. So Central's kind of known for big houses on big lots. Would we agree with that?
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with Central being known for that.
That's
And it's
correct.
something that we're proud of. Now, they also have other developments where you got some big houses on small lots. People that buy in there are okay with that, and I'm okay with them having that. So it's our appeal because we have people coming to Central, and they're still coming from Baton Rouge and the adjoining parishes because of our school, and we should be proud of that too. We have a very good school, and I have no children. I've never had a child take advantage of the good schooling we have, but I had no problem paying into the system because it was made me proud of where I live. And I like reading the paper when it says we're number 2 or number 3 in the state. So, but I know I recently talked to someone in a nice little subdivision off of the Central Thruway, and the lady walked from over next door. Well, she saw my sign on my car and asked me questions. Then she tells me she's coming from the Jones Creek area because her son-in-law and her daughter live in Central. Her grandkids are in Central, and she and her husband just love Central. And you're going to find more and more, not just young couples, but also older couples. We provide an attraction to good people that want to move to Central, and I want to keep Central as keep that attraction going.
So if you were talking about the master plan earlier, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, so don't answer it if you don't want to. Uh, would because we had talked on the phone earlier today, and we were talking about the UDC, and I really don't want to get deeply into that. But if I were to recommend that we should probably look at our building codes, would that be something that you think would be worth it, venturing into?
Well, we need to have them. There's generally standard codes. We're following the codes of East Baton Rouge Parish so that we remain consistent with them. And you have to if you want to keep your fire districts and your fire ratings the same. You have to maintain all the same codes. But
What I was asking though is because we talked about, oh, you went into big lots, big lots, big subdivision. I agree with that. Is that something that we could put in our building codes? That's kind of what I was getting at.
well, I look at it. That would come from the master plan setting a density per acre or per number of acres. So that if you came in and want to do a big lot subdivision, it's got to be one that the master plan is recommending that level of density. It's when they want to subdivide that acre into eighth acres, quarter acre lots, whatever, for single family dwellings is when you start increasing the density, or then you have to re-rate it to go to like apartment complexes where you're going to have even higher, like 6 to 10 or 20 people per acre. Based on now, I wouldn't really see a developer wanting to put an apartment complex up near Highway 64. There's no attraction for that up there. I could be wrong, but I don't think the marketing would support apartment complexes way out in District 5, especially on the upper part of it, because it's so rural.
I
Uh,
don't think we would. I don't think apartment complexes would get approved out here anyway.
well, it probably wouldn't be approved. What initiates it all is a developer who wants to buy a piece of property, and in his mind, he wants to develop it to a certain thing.
Right.
Right? He needs to know what our master plan and what our UDC codes are before he ventures off into buying that land or tying it up and then turning around and trying to get all the permits to build and find out then that, well, you can't do that because it's not allowed in this area. That's my point. And it's because that works is because the master plan had set these things and they were pushing him to build apartment complexes, let's say, over in a particular area of the city on a particular roadway because it's better managed because you have the proper water available, proper sewer available, and the roadways are properly sized to accept the vehicles that are getting on every morning at 7 o'clock and coming home every 5. There's a whole lot of things that have to go into that design, that plan to make an area work. You don't have all these choke points. So
I think just to clarify, and I just want to make sure we
yeah,
clarify, is I think it's against our master plan to put apartment complexes in first off, and I believe that if I recall correctly. So there's no apartment complexes coming into Central. So secondly, uh, to clarify, is I think that also our utility development code, which is what we're talking about, is just a fancy term for building code. And building code can dictate what types of projects you can build, how they're built, what color they are. I mean, the overlay district that they're proposing downtown, excuse me, when they if they build the city hall, is that's kind of what it is. It's just kind of a real fancy UDC that says what you can build, how it can be built, what color it may be, what type of nail you use, all the way to the elevation. So they kind of all work hand in hand. But we just want to make sure, Jeff, to be clear, that nobody here thinks we're talking about building apartments.
no, no, and I just used that as an example.
I know
As
you did. I just, but
yeah,
you know how this town works. I
okay,
want to make
okay.
sure
Yeah,
that's
John
clear.
Meyer said this. No, no, I I think if you take a ride down the new Wax Road extension, or whatever better term to call it, where it passes by Coach's Grill and Cafe Phoenicia, and you go in the back there, and you see these different types of condominium type settings. Some of them are individual buildings, and some of them are contiguous buildings. You know, they're connected to each other. But you look at the landscaping, you look at the fronts, and that's kind of, I see that's what we're looking towards, the design element for the different type of residences where they're higher density, and it looks good. It's very appealing. It, as long as they keep the maintenance up on, they're going to be very noteworthy. I that's just my point. But everyone says, and I hear it repeatedly, they want Central to have the country flavor, rural flavor. I'm all for it because that's where I live, and that's exactly what we have out here. And yeah, I would want to look real hard at before some high density subdivisions, better for lack of a better term, start popping up out here because there's no more floodplain. Well, we need to make sure because we don't necessarily, where I live, have access to the sewers. We all are on our own little individual treatment plants. And you can't pop in one of those subdivisions with everybody on individual treatment plants. They've got to connect up to the high pressure sewer systems that you're seeing in the southern part of the city. And if you see recently, City Parish has brought out another line up out Hooper headed towards Scotlandville to that treatment plant in anticipation. Now that tells you somebody's anticipating additional sewer connections in the city of Central, and the system that they're running right now is not at maximum. So that's looking down the road, and I think that's very good. We should be very pleased. So all the ones that've been unhappy with their sewer adjustment fees over the years, at least the engineers with EVR are looking ahead to stay ahead of the curve.
All right. So I think we've covered development. We've covered drainage. Uh, uh, IBTS. I couldn't get that abbreviation out of my
Yes.
mouth for some reason. IBTS. What do we think about IBTS? What do you want to bring to that game?
Well, I think we need to stay with that concept of contracting out our public works. It's best best bang for our buck right now because we don't take on a whole lot of overhead of having a lot of employees with the also additional costs of benefits and things of that nature. That down the road in 20, 30 years, we start seeing those costs kicking in when the employees we have today they start retiring. Um, you're seeing it all over the country. So right now, if we can find a company that's willing to bid at a price we can afford and have all our public works taken care of for us, I think we're ahead of the game. And it shows in that the 13 years we've been operating, we've been running surpluses every year on the 2-cent sale tax that provides the revenue for the city management. So we're doing something right there too. Now, like
Provided
everybody,
provided that they can meet the service needs, though. Correct? Would you agree with that?
exactly, because they're under contract. Scope of services have been written, and there should be performance indicators that you constantly check the contractor, which is them, their performance standards are met to receive their billing. The billing they make to us, they receive their payment. So it works in both directions. I'm familiar with all of it because I've done this over the years as a state employee with different contracts for the state. We have to stay right on top of the contractors. So yeah, somebody's got to complain about somebody at all times. But I'm willing to look at it, and if there's any complaints, I'll make recommendations. So I'd like to see everybody happy, and we get the best for what we're paying for. I'm not one that's going to be standing here screaming we need somebody new. I haven't had or seen anything to initiate that. But everything is always tweaking. An engineer is always looking to tweak the system to get more and more out of your for value for your money, and that's one of the things I'd be looking at.
Absolutely. Let's see what do we miss? What have we went not touched on here, Jeffrey? I just want to get your
Uh,
policy out. So, what have
we
I missed?
we still have the southeast corner of Hooper and Sullivan to talk about.
All right. Yeah, we missed the big one. All right. So, tell us about City Hall.
Okay, City Hall. Initially, when I first started considering running for office, and I made some responses to the local newspapers about it. My position initially was I was not in favor of putting a $5 million building on a $2 million parcel of property, and I didn't know what else was going around it. Since then, I've been able to review online data, cost of engineering cost analyses over the next 50 years. Um, a lot of I've been able to review a lot of reports that were created back in 05, 07, 2010, uh, with respect to the corner of, let me bring this up. I want to make sure I use the correct terminology. A report that was done in 2007 really kicked it all off, a sustainable design assessment team report, where they looked at some point in time, Central needs to invest in governmental buildings for their future growth, to manage their future growth. Initially, we're leasing parts of strip malls, to use a better term. They're using the one over there off of Hooper, is where City Hall's located, and in the one over by Oak Point is where the Public Works is being managed. Well, at some point in time, you want to consolidate all your government functions into governmental buildings that the government owns. And when I saw the future planning for that corner in a town center governmental complex with future expansions, hopefully having the school board build their facilities there also, and then bring in some retail and green space and develop, something really nice, architecturally controlled. I said, well, that's where the route we got to go, because we've been at this now, collecting a tax on the people for the last 13 years to pay for this. And at some point in time, we've got to start spending that tax. I don't believe in taxing people and not using the tax and give the people something to show for their money. Well, I'm not sold on the size of this city hall or the cost of it, but as an engineer and looking down the road, sometimes I would tell people, make sure you're designing it right, because in 5 or 10 years it may not be big enough. Make sure you do your due diligence on that too. So, but it appears the discussions with constituents in the 5th district, they're not happy with it. They don't like it. They don't want it right now. They want the drainage taken care of first, and I would be willing to support that. That's not a problem, because as it is right now, I'm not going to be able to vote on this building, this city hall, 5 million or not, or 17,000 square feet or not, because it's the present board and the present administration are making that decision before this fall. So I would have to probably live with whatever we have come January if I'm elected, and I will, promise the citizens of this city that I will do my best to see that it's properly built. We follow all the bid contracts and all, and it's built properly. If it doesn't get to that point, well, then we may be looking at dealing with the city hall and the cost and size differently if it's not a done deal for January. So I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen in the next few months. I will adapt to whatever happens. But my thing is, once we get the drainage going, we need to go ahead and get started on our town center. Because once we can get that going, we start establishing development and architecture and all to where the northwest corner of that intersection might start developing to complement the government complex on the southeast corner. And there's a lot in the Sustainable Design Assessment Team report that shows futuristic plans for the northwest corner, and the master plan has things in it, and there's an overlay district to where everything in on that four corners is going to complement each other. And for those who hate uh, roundabouts, it also shows a giant roundabout in the middle of that intersection. So I'm waiting to see how that's going to go over. But they will be bringing Hooper Road 4-lane to that intersection. They're presently bringing Sullivan 4-lane to that intersection. And at some point in time, we need to start developing that intersection and make it the center of our city. And that's what the founders of our city looked at, and I think we should carry that on. They did a good job with their reports.
So the overlay, just to make sure that people understand what an overlay is for that area that's going to be around where the new city hall is being built, whether it's built in with this administration or another administration. The overlay is a very good idea, and kind of touch base, just define what an overlay is.
What they're doing, it's like a master plan within a master plan. They're taking that area, they've delineated the perimeter boundaries of it, and they're saying any new construction in this area must complement the architecture that's being established at the town center for the governmental buildings, so that all of the development in those areas run hand in hand. You won't have something where somebody walks in, wow, what is this over here? It doesn't look anything like that over there. It all works together, coincides together, because this is what our investment, the citizens of Central, is our crown jewel that we plan to build and develop over the next 5, 10, 20 years. And with a utilization as far out as 50 years before we should have to look at a city hall that's now at a point we either renovate or we go and build a whole new one on site, or we do. You follow what I'm getting at? You have it. It's requiring a whole lot more deciding on what the monies we're going to spend 50 years down the road. But you want to build something that's going to make that time.
It makes everything in that area uniform.
Uniformity that complements
Each other.
and the architects, that's what they do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a lot of them. They do a very good job of it. The best example I can give of that is if you go downtown, Governor Foster back in 2000 said, I'm tired of all the state agencies being all over town, and a lot of them are trying to go to other cities. He says, Baton Rouge is the hub of Louisiana, and it's our governmental center here with the state capitol building. So he, the state owned all the properties down several streets south of the Capitol building, and they owned a lot of old buildings, and none of them looked alike over the years. This one looked like this. They tore them all down, and they built those 4 brand new buildings down there, and we started moving into those buildings in 2003. They were of an architectural design that was consistent. They made what they call an office park down there. They landscaped it. There's a ton of green space. And if you go down there today and look at it and say, well, this is pretty nice. And guess what? It's already 15 years old. And you look how their designs flowed and worked. They They even made the garage buildings to the buildings down there complement the architectural design. So,
And that's pretty much the same concept that they're going to do with the overlay down there.
that's it.
Question for you, because you've been around this. I've spoken to God knows how many people over the last couple of weeks, hundreds, and I think that most people believe this. And just tell me if you agree or disagree. I think that most people that I speak to believe that we need a city hall. I think that most people believe that the city hall should be put after drainage. I think that most people believe that $5 million might be a little much right now for a city hall. Anything you disagree with any of those statements?
No, I'm getting the same. I'm getting the same remarks from the people that I'm speaking to, and I respect that, and I can work with that.
I agree, and I agree with that as well. So I'm going to take this just a step further, and maybe I shouldn't, but I am. So right now we have. We don't want to use any numbers, but let's say we have $20 million in the bank. We could spend $5 million fixing drainage, $5 million for city hall. That's our total savings over our existence, our 12, 13 year period. So wouldn't it be? I'm just pulling numbers out of the air, guys. So don't stick to the numbers. Uh, would it be? Would you be opposed to the city proposing a city hall that has to go to public vote? And the way that we would bring it to public vote is by issuing it as a bond issue. So we're not actually physically spending our cash. We actually do it. We actually issue a bond to a surety company. The surety company then invests the money into the city hall, and the taxpayer then could pay it back on their water bill. Maybe it was one way. There's many ways of doing it. But let's just say it's your water bill, which would be maybe an extra dollar or two. Would you think that that way the city would probably have, instead of me guessing what the city wants, the city actually would vote on it, and so that way they could actually say yes or no that we want this project because majority rules. Would that be something you would be in if you were sitting on council? Would that be something that you would at least be interested in hearing?
If I'm sitting on council and it's January or February and the city hall is not a done deal that we've received from the prior administration, then yes, I would be open to us looking at a lot of different methods of payment. My only remarks, a lot of people say we need to do the drainage before we do the city hall. Well, as an engineer, I don't think linearly. I don't think you do one thing, then you do the next, and you do the next, because if you do that, we're not going to get much accomplished in 4 years. You have to do projects simultaneously. But you also have to look at what your costs. You have to be realistic. The monies that you have, you need to decide if you're going to use monies that are set asides and they exist, or if you're going to use those monies to procure more monies. There's a infinite amount of ways to obtain money for your projects. If the project's given to us where we decide, well, then, yeah, of course, there's enough people have said they want more input, because I don't want to be ugly, but if someone says, I don't believe in spending $5 million on a city hall, then my question to them has to be, if I'm going to represent you, how much you willing to spend? How big do you want it? I need to know these things so that we can try and put together the city hall that will satisfy everybody, even though that's impossible. It won't satisfy most people. But if the administration that has it now makes the decisions, and remember, they were duly elected, roughly 4 years ago, so it's within their rights to do what they want to do. If they did make the decisions on this city hall and how it progresses forward, and they lock in commitments and all, that's what the next city hall is going to receive. I'm perfectly willing to pick that up if I'm elected and make sure that the citizens are protected and that the contractors do what they're going to be hired to do at the prices they commit to. So that it's kind of a weasel way of getting around it, but I'm an accommodating kind of guy as long as we keep staying within the rules. And when the rules keep jumping around, you got to be careful. But I also, a lot of people will just object to the new city hall, but they won't tell me why. They just object to the size and the amount. Okay. you're objecting to the whole concept of the government, the city center, and starting something that the city can be proud of. Oh well, not really. I said, okay, well then, what size and how much are you willing to spend? You
Do
know,
you
that's
think maybe? Do you think maybe it could be that citizens? You would have to say, because I've spoken to a lot of people just as you have. You would have to say that most citizens are a little uneasy every time it rains these days. Would you agree with that?
e-
And so
exactly. Yes.
and so when they see a city hall, regardless of the number, coming up in the paper and proposing a city hall, they tend to believe, because I think that most people want drainage fixed first. You know, what they consider to be broken in drainage, digging out their local ditches, and not just one of them, here and there and here and there, all of them. And they would rather see that $5 million spent on that than they would a city hall. Would you agree with that?
That's the logic that I'm listening to when I talk to people in the fifth district.
That's the same logic that I hear, and I'm all over this. I've been all over this city for the last week or two. And so, if that's the case, regardless of how anyone proposes this, whether the council pushes it through, or they don't push it through, is really just who's guess at this point. But wouldn't you say that it's probably a better idea to allow the citizens to vote on that, and for the citizens to, because we're talking about what they're going to push through, and we're talking hypotheticals. But right now we have the time to say to our elected officials, let them vote. Just let them vote. I mean, it removes it as a political issue. It removes it as an incumbent political issue that you're going to wear around your neck. Let people vote for it. Propose it as a bonding issue. Propose it just as a vote in general, if that's what you so choose to do. But remove it as a political issue by letting the people speak. This town is so divided right now that by pushing your agenda through because you think it's the best, you represent both sides. You represent the ones that agree with you as well as you represent the ones that disagree with you. So, in my opinion, Jeff, and I know that I took that over on a tangent. I'm sorry, but let them vote. Just let folks vote for it.
Okay, and I understand that. I don't want to say I disagree with you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be a devil's advocate for you,
Fair
as
enough.
as a 30-year civil service employee, knowing how government works. At some point in time, when the citizens vote for certain people in, that everyone understands what their wishes and desires are. But if a group up and decides they're not happy and we want to be able to vote on something, and they say, okay, then we'll grant you the ability to vote. Well, when does that stop? At what point, when you elect someone to make the decisions for you, so this is a constitutional republic where we elect individuals to make decisions for us. You have to at some point in time trust in them based upon what you liked or didn't like in them. I'm not against the citizens expressing their views and being able to vote. You're getting real close to a slippery slope. But what if the next issue pops up, something totally different? And I don't want to pick anything, but let's just say another form uh, of central city government pops up, and a real strong, loud group makes an objection to it, and they want to vote on that before they move forward. So yes, I understand. I sympathize with the people who disagree. It would be nice to be able to vote on everything, and may not be the solution. And I'm I need to see it play out some more before. I think I just got a gut feeling, at some point in time down the road, it's going to work out. If it doesn't, that's what the people are going to do November 6th. And the people that they want to hire and put in city government. But a leader can't. I think someone who's going to represent the people can't come in and be so absolute and unchanging. You have to be able to listen to all arguments and do the right thing. Not everybody's going to like it. You're not going to be able to satisfy everybody, but I know I'm talking in circles. I understand the concept of representative government, It doesn't always work perfectly, but it works better than the alternatives when you look at other countries and how they manage to resolve their disagreements.
Right.
So,
I think that the city hall is probably a 50-50 issue in this town. That's kind of what I get.
well, if we have to build the city hall as they're presenting it, we're gonna we're gonna take that, I think, next year and make good come out of it. I guess is the best thing I can say. We'll look at a way to do things to where we can start bringing the people back in that aren't happy with it. Well, let's make the best of this. Let's look at this. Let's see what we do that when we design the town center. The town center project should go forward. It, we just have to see what's going to happen in the next few months. I don't know, and I will not predict what's going to
No,
happen.
no, we don't know. We're just guessing. But it just seems to me, and I don't disagree with you that you can't vote on everything. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I just think it's such a controversial issue in this town that it should be a strong consideration.
Well,
Uh,
it shouldn't have been. It should have. I guess the way it came out. I don't know. I don't want to blame who's at fault for anything. I just sometimes you just
Nobody's at
got to
fault.
look.
It's just different opinions. I mean, that's all. Nobody's at fault. There's no evil devils here.
That's. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. We just some people are not going to be happy with the way it works out, and some people will be happy. But the ones that are not happy, one of the charges of the new council, whether I'm on it or not, is try to start bringing those people back in and let's try and do something that's going to make everybody happy. There might be some new compromises on the horizon that we can incorporate. I don't know yet. Those are going to be some new days over there in January.
That's for sure. So, what else are we going through, Jeff? We've been through drainage. We've been through development. We've been through IBTS. We just covered City Hall. Is there any other topics that you would like to cover?
The only topic last I would like to mention is I think from what I'm seeing of all the candidates of all the positions and everyone is projecting positive statements and positive looking forward and not and they're everyone is trying to encourage deterring the negative comments. There's no reason for any of us to try and get an advantage over another opponent by going negative. I won't. If anybody has anything ugly to say about me, I ain't saying nothing. I won't respond to it.
Well, if it helps you, I think you're pretty.
Oh well, thank you. My mother, who is my wife, she thinks she's my mother, made me wear this shirt. Insisted on it. So, and I
I
was
think she
still
made a good choice. I think she made a good choice.
but I think the two gentlemen I'm running against, everything I hear, they're fine fellas, and we're all three equally trying to get the support of our constituents in our fifth district, and one of us should eventually represent the district. And I will support whoever. If I'm not the councilman, I will support who is, because I still my concern for the city is the drainage. I wanted to participate. I was just wanting to run for councilman because I'd be able to get some of the final votes in on what we get for drainage. And I want
And you have a lot to offer. You have an educational background that's going to fit right in line with what we need to get done in this city. It was all the controversial issues that we have are over drainage and development, and so you fit right in line with uh, what the controversial issues are, and you can bring a level of education uh, and experience to those issues that uh, we have somewhat now with one of the gentlemen that's on the council, but you're the only one. So, and he's not running this time, and you are. So, I think that the level of experience and education that you have is spot on.
But Jason Ellis is a fine engineer. I've had conversations with him. I like him very much. He has his reasons for not wanting to stay on the council, and kind of what kind of pushed me to say, well, if anything, I'd like to continue this tradition, if we want to call it, into the future. my profession, being on the council, to lend and give advice to the other council members. It's one way I can give back, and she understands we'll work around it. But I'm sure sometime in the future she's going to probably want to make one of those 6-week cross country runs. You know how that is. But
That's right.
But we enjoy it, and I'm going to do it if I'm given the opportunity. You know, I ask for the opportunity.
I agree with you, sir. I think you would, if you do have the opportunity, I think you'd be a very big asset to this town. Thank you, Jeff. I certainly we talk all the time, but I certainly enjoy every time that you and I speak. I think that we debate a little, which is always fun. Uh, but I think that with what you bring to the table, I think you would be a great guy for District 5 out there. I would also like to add that any of the other guys that are out there that have watched this, uh, that want a little notoriety, we have a big following on our YouTubes and some of our Facebooks, on some of the video feeds. Uh, fair can be. Come on, get your name out there, and that whether you're an incumbent, same issues. Fair is fair, or whether you're running for office, you're welcome to come on here and we can talk. I know most of you guys, so come on here and we can talk, and you can put your platforms out there so people can view them. Jeff, thank you, sir. As always, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much.
All right, buddy. Central, we love you, and thank y'all for watching, and we will catch you on the next one. Thank you. Good night.